let's find out the history of an early refrigerated carrier. And also, we'll find out who developed the mechanical refrigeration equipment, which became primarily used in transport trailers. In this video is the history of Gene Adams Refrigerated Trucking Service Incorporated, a Buffalo, New York based carrier with ICC certificate number 117903. We'll cover the good and the bad, and at the end of the video I'll reveal what happened to the company. Did they make it to deregulation? I'll tell you later. But first, I want you to do a couple of things for me. If you find this video helpful to learn more about the history of the trucking industry, I want you to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps put this channel out to more viewers so that more people can learn about the trucking industry. Gene Adams got started in trucking with a dump truck and $120 in 1932. Driving a dump truck was local work, and it would have been steady work in 1932. At just 20 years old, at least he got his foot in the door. His first venture in trucking ended abruptly when a railroad locomotive knocked his truck off the road. Gene Adams jumped clear. He wasn't hurt, although it did set his business back 6 months. In 1944, he shifted from hauling war materials to transporting refrigerated goods. Mr. Adams needed to build on this change of the type of freight he wanted to haul, so he decided to get his first customer. And that first customer was Mid-States Packing Company of Buffalo, New York. Hauling refrigerated freight was very much different than transporting general commodities. In those days, at first, wet ice would be used to keep things cold in the trailers. Longer distance would mean additional stops to replenish the melting ice with fresh ice. Later, dry ice was used. Then in 1945, advances in refrigeration technology created a big boom to the business. Trailers began to be fitted with refrigeration units to keep food cold. And we'll tell you later on in this video who developed that technology. Now, Gene Adams stopped driving in 1952, and he started managing his fleet of 10 trucks from his office. Business was good enough that he moved his refrigerated trucking line to a 7.5-acre site in the Buffalo suburb of Cheektowaga. Until 1959, Gene Adams Trucking Service mostly hauled fresh meat and had trouble finding enough freight to fill the trailers for a backhaul. He expanded by transporting fruits and vegetables. To do so, he acquired S&S Transportation Company. Combined, the revenues reached $2 million in 1964. But the S&S acquisition almost didn't happen. In November 1963, the ICC turned down the application, but they did encourage Gene Adams to provide an improved financial outlook for the surviving carrier in the merger. Eventually, the acquisition was approved. A year earlier, in 1963, the headquarters for the truck line was hit with a fire that did $200,000 in damage. 3 trailers loaded with food were destroyed along with the building. The fire was caused by a spark from an electric torch being used by a welder. The fire was the first of several troubles that fell on Gene Adams Refrigerated Trucking Service. Also in 1963, in October, a $1,000 fine was imposed in federal court on the Adams firm. The company had pled guilty to shipping meat between June and September of 1961 without an ICC certificate. In July 1969, Lewis G. Johnson Incorporated bought out Gene Adams Refrigerated Trucking Service Incorporated, which at the time was New York's largest refrigerated carrier. temporary control of the company had been granted by the ICC. The founder of Gene Adams Trucking was 56 years old when he passed away in October of 1967. His wife Helen had been vice president and secretary and then became owner and began running the firm. I guess she wanted to sell out. Adams was operating 4 terminals in Buffalo, Syracuse, and Binghamton, New York, and 1 in New Jersey at Hoboken. Louis G. Johnson had terminals in Port Gibson, New York, Milton and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Kearney, New Jersey. Combined, there would be 400 trucks, 250 employees, and the fleet was going into 13 states. The ICC granted full control of the Gene Adams firm in December of July 1969, so it only took 5 months. In 1970, Louis G. Johnson Incorporated wanted to expand. The company filed an application with the ICC for authority to transport meat from Wilmington, Delaware to 7 counties in western New York. That would solve a backhaul problem. As I've discussed in previous videos, at ICC hearings, any other trucking company that opposed the applications could appear and present their case as to why. This time, 2 other trucking companies told the ICC that ample service was presently being provided on the route by them. The 2 carriers that protested the application was Preston Trucking Company and National Freight Incorporated. The ICC agreed and denied the application. At least twice, thieves stole the company trucks and got away with the cargo. On December 20th, 1974, one occasion found a truck and trailer had been stolen, loaded with meat. And before getting away, the thieves also got away with mechanics' toolboxes and had broken into a cigarette vending machine at the Buffalo terminal. 3 months later, March 17, 1975, a trailer loaded with 42,000 pounds of sugar was stolen from the terminal at Port Gibson, New York. The trailer was loaded with 8,400 5-pound bags of Food Club brand granulated sugar. Those 21 tons of sugar was worth $30,000. The Louis Johnson firm acquired Beverage Transport, a trucking company once located in East Bloomfield, New Jersey. Later, they moved to the existing Johnson terminal in Port Gibson, and the 2 lines were merged together. Now, let's stop at this point for a moment and talk about the development of mechanical refrigeration equipment in the trucking industry. Let's talk about Frederick McKinley Jones. He was born on May 17, 1893 in Covington, Kentucky, raised by his father, John Jones, who was a railroad worker until age 7, when a Catholic priest in Cincinnati, Ohio, took him in. But that Catholic priest died 2 years later. Frederick Jones left school after the 6th grade at age 11. He went to work in a garage as a cleaning boy, and by age 14 was working as an automobile mechanic, then later became the garage foreman. Not bad for a self-taught young man. He moved to Halleck, Minnesota in 1912 and worked as a mechanic on a large farm owned by the owner of Great Northern Railroad. His fascination with electricity and steam locomotive engines began at that farm. By age 20, he received his engineering license and later upgraded it to the highest license grade. He served in the U.S. Army during World War I. His mechanical skills led to be a sergeant working as an electrician, performed the wiring necessary to equip his war camp with electricity, telegraph, and telephone service. After World War I ended, Frederick McKinley Jones returned to Halleck, Minnesota, and began learning about electronics. He built a transformer for the town's first radio station, later inventing other devices for the motion picture industry. Around 1938, he began designing the Thermo Control Model A automatic truck refrigeration unit. It was a portable air cooling unit for trucks carrying perishable food to prevent spoilage. The design of the unit meant for it to be attached to underneath the trucks. It was too heavy, so he developed Model B, a smaller and lighter unit, but didn't provide a long enough life. Model B was smaller and lighter, but didn't provide a long enough life. Model C, a light, compact unit, could be mounted to the front of a truck trailer. He later founded the U.S. Thermal Control Company, which became Thermo King Corporation. By 1949, revenues hit $3 million. Model C refrigeration units were originally made for military use, but started being more available for commercial use following World War II. Some of his other patents included design for air conditioning unit issued in 1942, removable cooling units for compartments, 1943. Also in 1943, a patent was issued for means for automatically stopping and starting gas engines. Two-cycle gas engines, 2 patents, one in 1945 and one in 1947. In 1949, a patent issued for automatic refrigeration systems for long-haul trucks, and many more throughout the 1950s. Later in 1975, the story of Gene Adams and Lewis Johnson trucking concerns comes to an abrupt end. They filed bankruptcy later in 1975, shut down, throwing people out of work. And also, 2 years later, some management of the trucking companies were indicted in bankruptcy court for fraud, hiding assets from the bankruptcy court. A sad ending to 2 well-known refrigerated carriers in New York and Pennsylvania. They didn't even make it to deregulation. So that concludes our story today. Let us know if you liked the video and stay tuned for the next episode.